I was standing outside the house, watching my family laugh and chat, completely unaware of the nightmare that was about to shatter everything I thought I knew. My name is Emma, and I'm 34. A day that should have marked the beginning of my forever ended up being the day my entire life crumbled into pieces. It was supposed to be perfect. My fiancé, Ryan, and I had been together for almost 5 years, and after all this time, he'd finally proposed to me. It was supposed to be the most joyous day of my life, the engagement party. With all of our closest friends and family gathered to celebrate, I could already feel the butterflies in my stomach as I looked around the yard, the soft glow of fairy lights illuminating the faces of everyone I loved. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of, or so I thought. But that night, things went terribly wrong. I had stepped inside the house to freshen up, my heart full to the brim with happiness. I didn't expect what was waiting for me when I returned. I had been gone for just a few minutes, and in those few minutes, my world shattered. When I walked back outside, I noticed the sound of laughter and conversation fading. The world felt distant, blurry, as if I was walking through a fog. I looked around, expecting to see Ryan, but he wasn't there. Neither was my sister, Nicole. At first, I thought it was nothing, just a silly annoyance. Really, maybe they were off talking or enjoying a quiet moment together. It didn't feel like a big deal at first. But when I asked a friend where they had gone, my stomach dropped. She pointed toward the old oak tree in the backyard where we used to swing as kids. "I think I saw them go that way," she said. Her smile was light, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I made my way toward the tree, and as I turned the corner, I saw them. My legs stopped moving. My heart was pounding so loud in my chest I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come out. There they were, Ryan and Nicole, standing in the shadows, just a few feet away, with their arms around each other. But it wasn't just an innocent embrace. No, it was something much worse.
Nicole had her hands wrapped around Ryan's neck, and Ryan, he was kissing her.
It wasn't just a quick peck on the cheek. No, it was deep, desperate, the kind of kiss you share with someone you're in love with. I felt like the ground beneath me was disappearing, like I was sinking into the earth. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I wasn't sure if I was still standing or if I had already fallen. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. They didn't see me at first. They were too wrapped up in their own little world, and that made it worse somehow. I wanted to scream, to run, to make them see me, but my body wouldn't move. My sister, my fiancé, the two people I loved most in this world, they were betraying me, right in front of my eyes. I backed away slowly, not wanting them to notice me, not wanting to confront the nightmare that was unfolding. My hand shot up to cover my mouth, and I tried to stifle the sobs that were building inside me. I couldn't let them hear me. I couldn't let them know how much they had broken me. But I couldn't stay. I couldn't stay in that place, surrounded by people who had no idea what had just happened. I turned on my heel and ran. I didn't run through the party. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want anyone to ask questions. I just needed to get away. So I fled through the back gate, down the street, the sound of my heels clicking sharply against the pavement, my breath ragged. My pearl earrings bounced with every step, and my engagement dress felt like a costume for a fool. The further I ran, the more the weight of what I had just seen sank into me. I ended up at a hotel, miles away from the party, from my life. I paid for a room with a credit card, my hands shaking so badly I could barely sign my name. Once inside, I collapsed onto the bed, the reality of my life shattering into pieces. My phone, which I had gripped tightly the entire time, began buzzing. I stared at it, terrified of what I might find. Ryan, Nicole, both had already sent me messages. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't want to know, but I had to. I had to see what they had to say. I opened Ryan's first. Emma, I'm so sorry you had to see that. It's been going on for a while. I only proposed to you hoping I could forget my feelings for Nicole. But I can't. You were a temporary distraction. A temporary distraction. The words hit me like a physical blow. A temporary distraction. 5 years. 5 years of my life. Our future. All reduced to a temporary distraction. I couldn't even process it. I couldn't understand how this had happened. Tears blurred my vision as I opened Nicole's message next. I know you're upset, but you have to understand. Ryan and I are meant to be together. It's fate. We couldn't fight it anymore. Fate. That was the word she used to justify this. Fate. There was no apology. No remorse. Just a cold, selfish justification for destroying everything I had worked for. Everything I had believed in. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the pain. But a memory flashed through my mind. I was 16, about to go to my junior prom. My grandmother had given me a beautiful silver locket as a gift, and it was the most precious thing I owned. Nicole had begged me to let her borrow it for a dance the week before my prom. I said no, but she threw a tantrum, and my parents sided with her. They told me I was being selfish, that I should let her borrow it. And when she lost it, I was told it was just an accident, that I should be understanding, that I should be the bigger person. Her heartbreak was an inconvenience. My needs were irrelevant. Nicole's feelings were always more important than mine. I had spent my entire life being the sensible one, the responsible one, the one who could be counted on. But Nicole, she was the golden child, beautiful, brilliant, and always getting what she wanted. And now she wanted Ryan. Just like the locket, she took him, and I was supposed to just deal with it. I spent 3 days at that hotel, numb. I ignored the dozens of calls from my parents. I couldn't face them, not yet. But eventually, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I had to go back. I had to face them. So I drove home, knowing I'd have to pack up my things and leave. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw my parents' car. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I walked into the front door and froze. There they were, my parents, my sister, and Ryan, sitting together in the living room. They looked so domestic, so peaceful, like a family. My family. But I wasn't part of it anymore. And that was when I realized nothing would ever be the same again. I stared at them, my heart pounding in my chest. But before I could speak, my mother looked up, eyes glistening with tears. "Isn't it wonderful," she asked, her voice thick with emotion, "that Ryan and Nicole found each other?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to say something, anything. But I couldn't. Not yet. The days that followed were a blur, each one feeling like I was walking through a fog of disbelief. It wasn't just the betrayal from Ryan and Nicole. It was the deafening silence from my family. No one called to check on me. No one cared that I had disappeared, that I was struggling to breathe through the pain. My heart, once full of love and hope, was now replaced with this gnawing emptiness. I had to keep reminding myself that I wasn't crazy for feeling like this. I wasn't overreacting. What Ryan and Nicole had done wasn't just an affair. It was a violation of the most sacred thing in my life, my family, my trust. But none of that seemed to matter, not to them. It was clear that my family had chosen sides. I could almost hear the whispers, the conversations behind closed doors. I didn't need to be there to know what was being said. I could imagine it perfectly how my mother probably apologized for Nicole, how she justified her actions as fate, how Ryan's betrayal was somehow my fault for not understanding him. for not being the woman he needed. I didn't know how much longer I could stand it. The first confrontation came when my mother called. She had been calling every day, but I had avoided her. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone, especially not her. But one evening, after seeing yet another message pop up on my phone, I finally picked up. The screen flashed with my mother's name, and for a second, I hesitated. I knew what she would say. I knew what she would try to justify. But it didn't matter. I was done hiding. I hit accept and pressed the phone to my ear. "Emma." My mother's voice was soft, but with an edge of impatience. "We need to talk." I almost laughed. We needed to talk. What exactly was there to talk about? "About what, Mom? My voice was tight, each word a little sharper than I intended. "Don't be like this. You're not being fair," she said. "Nicole and Ryan, what happened between them, it's not like you think. It's complicated." I bit my lip, the frustration bubbling to the surface. Complicated. You're telling me it's complicated. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of everything crashing down on me again. They're together. Mom, together. Don't you get that? There was a pause on the other end. I could almost see her sitting in her perfect house, wearing her pearls, trying to make everything look right, trying to pretend like this wasn't a disaster. "I know," she finally said, her voice quieter now. "But they've been through so much. You don't understand." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, I understand all right. You and Dad are so busy trying to make everything perfect that you can't even see what's right in front of you. Your daughter, me falling apart. You've chosen sides without even thinking twice." "Emma, that's not fair," she said, her tone starting to crack. "You're damn right it's not fair." I snapped. "I'm the one who's been sacrificing for this family. And you choose her. You choose her over me." There was a long silence on the other end. I waited. I wanted her to say something. Anything that would show me that she cared, that she understood. But all I got was the sound of her breathing, steady and measured. Finally, she spoke, but her words weren't the ones I wanted to hear. "I think you need some time. We all do. Maybe you should just go away for a bit. Take some time to clear your head." A cold laugh escaped me. "Is that what you think? You think I just need time. You think I'm being dramatic." "No, Emma," she said quietly. "But sometimes, distance helps. It helps you see things more clearly." I could feel my chest tightening as the anger swelled inside me. "Distance," I muttered. "What? Like I should just disappear, go away quietly, is that it?" I didn't wait for an answer. I hung up. I knew what she meant, distance. She wanted me to back down, to accept it, to accept the fact that my sister and my fiancé had ripped my heart out, and the only thing I was expected to do was to smile and forgive them. But I wasn't going to do that. I couldn't. I wouldn't. That's when it hit me, the plan. I didn't know how I was going to do it yet, but I knew I needed to make them pay. I needed to make Ryan and Nicole understand what it felt like to have everything you loved taken from you, without warning, without any regard for your pain. I wasn't going to just let them live their lives as if nothing had happened. I wouldn't sit idly by while they lived happily ever after. Not when my world was torn apart. I needed control. I needed to find a way to regain it. So, I started making a plan. I pulled out my phone, opened up my notes app, and began typing. It was the only way I could think to make sense of what I was feeling. Every idea I had, every thought, went down onto that screen. My mind was working in overdrive, processing every single detail, every moment when they'd thought I wasn't watching, every lie I'd been fed, every little betrayal. I was going to gather evidence. I would expose them, not just to my family, but to everyone. I'd been the good one for too long, the responsible one, the one who always took care of things. But now I was going to make them pay for everything. They would see that no one gets to hurt me like this and walk away without consequences. The first step was simple. Ryan and Nicole. They were reckless. They thought they could keep their secret hidden. They were wrong. I knew them too well. But I had to move carefully. If I wanted to make sure this worked, I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just storm in and accuse them of everything. No, I needed to be patient. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. The moment when they wouldn't see it coming. But for now, I had to play it cool. I needed to keep up the act, pretend I was okay. Pretend I was just taking some time for myself. The perfect disguise. I spent the next few days doing just that, keeping my distance, staying out of the spotlight, watching everything unfold from the shadows. I watched Ryan and Nicole. I listened to my family, pretending like nothing had happened. And while I did, I gathered the pieces. I was ready to strike, but just as I was beginning to put my plan in motion, I got a call that stopped me cold. It was from Sarah, my best friend. Her voice was frantic. "Emma, you need to listen to me," she said, her tone sharp with urgency. "I found something big. You need to see this." I froze. What could it be? What had she found? "Sarah, what are you talking about?" I whispered. "I'll explain everything, but you need to come now. This changes everything." I felt my heart race as the dread sank in. What had she uncovered? I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me as I drove to meet Sarah. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, and every thought in my head was a jumbled mess of rage, betrayal, and a sick curiosity. What had she found? What could possibly change the course of everything I had planned? I'd been working on my revenge for days, carefully plotting the way I would expose Ryan and Nicole. I'd started gathering pieces of evidence, little things here and there. Text messages I knew they didn't expect me to have access to. Documents they thought were long deleted. Their lies were right in front of me. And I was building my case piece by piece, like a puzzle. But Sarah was my wild card. She was the one person who could dig deeper, find the cracks I hadn't thought to look for. As I pulled up to her apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I had been so sure of my plan, so convinced that everything was falling into place. But now, with the look of urgency in Sarah's voice, I wasn't so sure anymore. Maybe I had missed something. Maybe my perfect revenge wasn't as perfect as I thought. I knocked on her door, trying to steady my breath. When she opened it, her eyes were wide with a mix of excitement and fear. She grabbed my arm, pulling me inside without a word. "Sarah, what is it? What did you find?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but the desperation was creeping through. "Sit down," she said, her voice low. She was shaking. I don't even know how to explain this, but I found something big. She handed me her phone, the screen showing a thread of text messages. They were from Nicole, and they weren't what I expected. "Emma's been acting like she's fine, but she's going to crack soon." One of Nicole's messages read, "I'm going to keep playing along until she does. She's too smart for her own good. I'll keep you updated." I blinked, my mind racing. What the hell was this? I scrolled down. The next message was even worse. "Ryan doesn't know she's already onto us. She's playing the long game, and it's terrifying. I need to stay close. Make sure she doesn't find out everything. We can't let her ruin this for us." My heart dropped. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Sarah said, her voice shaking with disbelief. "Nicole's been watching you. She knew you were gathering evidence." Everything I had planned, everything I had worked so hard for, felt like it was falling apart in front of me. How could I have missed this? How had I not seen the warning signs? Nicole wasn't just my sister. She was manipulative, clever, and she had been playing me all along. But Ryan had been the one I trusted the most, the one I thought I could count on. I never imagined he'd be part of this game. I thought he was just weak. But this was betrayal on a level I hadn't prepared for. I felt a coldness settling in my bones. They had been using me this whole time. They had been plotting behind my back, pretending everything was fine, all while they worked to destroy me. And I had been so focused on my own hurt. I hadn't even realized the depth of their plan. I stood up, the need to act now bubbling inside me. "You need to keep this," I said, pushing Sarah's phone back into her hand. "I have to go. I need to confront them, now." "Wait," she stopped me, her voice frantic. "Emma, you don't know what you're walking into. They're playing you, and you're playing right into their hands." I turned back to face her, feeling the pressure of everything weighing on my chest. I can't let them get away with it. Sarah, I won't. I've been the one who's been manipulated, who's been humiliated. I'm done being the victim. I'll confront them with this, expose them for who they really are. "But you don't understand," she trailed off, biting her lip. "There's more. This could ruin everything." Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Could I risk ruining everything? Could I throw my entire family under the bus? Could I expose them in front of everyone? Shatter everything just to get back at them? I had no idea, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep pretending. I had to do something, or I'd lose myself completely. Before Sarah could say anything else, I left her apartment and rushed back to my place, my mind working in overdrive. The idea of confronting them, of making them see how far they'd pushed me, was all-consuming. But I couldn't act rashly. I needed to be strategic. I needed to hit them where it hurt. I spent the next few hours piecing together everything Sarah had uncovered. The texts, the evidence, the way they had been plotting against me. It was all coming together. But there was something else I needed to figure out: how to make them regret everything. How to make them understand the weight of their betrayal. I knew I couldn't just walk into that house, throw everything in their faces, and expect them to break down in front of me. No, I had to make them sweat. I had to make them question everything. I would be calm, calculated, almost cold. And when I finally revealed everything, they wouldn't know what hit them. But just as I started to put my plan into motion, something strange happened. I got a message from my father. I hadn't heard from him since everything had gone down. He'd been silent, just like the rest of my family. But now, the message was short, blunt, and to the point. "We need to talk, now." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. What did he want? Was this some sort of new manipulation? Or was it something else? I didn't have time to second-guess myself. I had to go. I had to face him, face them, and get to the bottom of this before it consumed me completely. But little did I know, what my father was about to say would change everything. I arrived at my parents' house, my heart thumping in my chest. As I walked inside, my father didn't greet me like usual. He stood by the fireplace, a strange look on his face. "Sit down, Emma," he said, his voice unusually calm. My stomach twisted. Something was off. "Listen carefully," he said slowly, locking eyes with me. "What I'm about to tell you, it's going to change everything." I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breath. The drive over to my parents' house had felt like it took forever. My mind was still spinning from the conversation with my father earlier. He'd said, "What I'm about to tell you, it's going to change everything." But when I'd walked into that living room, I didn't expect the confession to come with the weight it carried. What had he meant by that? Was he on Nicole and Ryan's side now? Had they somehow manipulated him, too? No, I couldn't let myself think like that. I'd spent too long already letting them control my emotions. I couldn't give them that power anymore. The time had come. I was done being the victim. I had waited long enough for this moment, the moment when I would take back control, when I would finally expose them for what they were. As I approached the front door, I could hear the muffled hum of the TV inside, the clinking of dishes being cleaned in the kitchen. My parents, as always, were in their little bubble of normalcy, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. "Emma." My father's voice greeted me from the living room. His usual authoritative tone was absent, replaced with something softer, almost hesitant. "Dad," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside of me. "We need to talk." I walked into the living room and saw my father sitting on the couch, looking tired. My mother was next to him, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. The second I walked in, their expressions changed, both of them suddenly alert, like they were waiting for something. "Sit down, Emma," my father said, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated for a moment, but then sat down across from them, feeling the weight of everything between us. My mother looked at me, but there was no warmth in her gaze, just a kind of exhaustion. "Emma, I don't know how to begin," my father said, his voice shaky. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I think you need to know something." I could feel my pulse quicken, the words hanging in the air like a thick fog. What could he possibly say that would change anything I had already made up my mind about them? There was no going back. "Dad," I interrupted, unable to hold back anymore. "I know what's been going on. I know about Nicole and Ryan. I've seen the texts. I've heard the lies." He flinched, and I saw his eyes dart to my mother for a moment. She didn't look surprised, just sad, resigned almost. "I'm sorry, Emma," my father said softly, his voice laced with regret. "I didn't know how to tell you, but I didn't know what else to do. I was trying to protect you from the truth." "Protect me?" My voice cracked, but I fought it back. "You should have protected me from them. You should have stopped it before it even started. But instead, you let them tear my life apart." The words came out sharper than I intended, and for a moment, I saw a flash of something in my father's eyes, guilt. Maybe regret, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough to undo the damage. "I tried, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But Nicole, she's your sister. I couldn't see past that. I didn't want to lose her. And Ryan, he's always been like a son to me. I didn't want to believe that he would betray you like this." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was weak, that he'd failed me as a father. But I knew that wasn't going to help. It wouldn't change anything. Not anymore. "Dad, this isn't about Nicole being my sister or Ryan being your son. This is about trust," I said, my voice trembling now. But I didn't care. "You let them both destroy me. And now you're sitting here telling me you didn't know what to do. I had to find out on my own, through texts, through lies. You didn't even try to protect me." My father looked away, clearly overwhelmed by the weight of my words. But my mother, she was silent. She hadn't said anything since I entered the room. I could feel her eyes on me, though, like she was searching for the right words. But nothing came. "Emma, I know you're angry," my mother said finally, her voice almost a whisper. "But please understand, we didn't know it would go this far. We didn't know that Ryan would—" "You didn't know?" I snapped, cutting her off. "You didn't know this wasn't a mistake. Mom, this was a choice. They chose each other. They chose to betray me. And you chose to look the other way." I saw the tears well up in her eyes, but it didn't move me anymore. It didn't matter. They didn't get to play the victim now. Not when I had been the one left in pieces. "Emma," my father said, his voice shaking. We didn't know what to say. We didn't know how to fix this. "You can't fix it," I said coldly. "Not anymore. The damage is done." For a moment, there was only silence. I could feel the tension in the room thickening. My parents didn't know how to make this right. But there was something else, something deeper inside me that was screaming for me to take back control. I stood up, the anger rising up in my chest, and I looked at them one last time. "I've been weak," I said, "more to myself than to them, but not anymore. You've all underestimated me, and you've underestimated what I'm capable of." Before they could respond, I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of their guilt and their lies still hanging in the air. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wasn't going to let Ryan or Nicole get away with it. And when I went to bed that night, it wasn't to rest, it was to prepare for the next phase of my plan. The next morning, my phone buzzed. I stared at the message, my heart sinking into my stomach. It was from Ryan. "We need to talk. In person. Now." I didn't respond right away. I stared at those words, wondering what kind of game he was playing now. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done playing by their rules. And when we met, I was going to make sure they understood the price of their betrayal. I stood there for a moment, staring at my phone. The message from Ryan blinked back at me, demanding my attention. "We need to talk. In person. Now." The words burned in my chest. Part of me wanted to text him back immediately, letting him know exactly how much I hated him, how much I wanted to expose everything he'd done. But I knew I couldn't give in to that impulsive urge. Not yet. I had a plan that needed to be executed perfectly, and I wasn't about to let him control how this conversation would go. Not anymore. I stared at the message, my mind racing. Ryan had no idea what I was really planning. He thought I was just going to let him apologize and walk away unscathed, like all the other times when he'd hurt me. He was wrong. This time, he would pay for what he'd done. I took a deep breath, tapping out a reply. "Fine, I'll meet you, same place as before." A few moments later, the message came back. "Yes, be there in an hour." I arrived early, parked across the street, and sat in my car, watching the sun sink lower in the sky, casting a soft golden hue across the pavement. It was almost poetic how everything was about to come crashing down, just like the sun sinking beneath the horizon. As I waited, I thought about everything that had led me here. The betrayal, the lies, the way my family had chosen Nicole over me, the way Ryan had acted as if I was disposable, and my father, his apology, his feeble attempt to explain his weakness, didn't make me feel better. It made me angrier. They'd all failed me. And now, it was my turn to make them understand what it felt like to be betrayed. My hands trembled, and I clenched them into fists. I was so close to finishing what I'd started. I'd gotten my evidence. I had a plan, and I was about to confront Ryan face to face. This was it. I took one last breath and stepped out of the car. Walking across the street and toward the restaurant where we'd first met, the door was already open, and I stepped inside, the familiar chime of the bell ringing as I entered. I scanned the room. Ryan was sitting at a table by the window, his posture relaxed, like he hadn't a care in the world. But I knew him better than that. I could see the tension in his eyes, the way he was avoiding making eye contact, the way his foot tapped nervously against the floor. He wasn't as calm as he wanted me to believe. I took a seat across from him, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. We just stared at each other, both of us trying to gauge the other's next move. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Emma," he said, his voice low and strained. "I know this is hard to hear, but I need you to understand what happened between me and Nicole. It's complicated." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't let him see that. I couldn't let him have the satisfaction of knowing how much he still affected me. Instead, I kept my expression hard, my gaze unwavering. "Complicated," I echoed, my voice tight. "You think what happened is complicated, Ryan. You didn't just hurt me. You betrayed me. You chose her over me. And you think I'm supposed to just accept that." He flinched, but he didn't look away. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear. I never wanted this to happen. It just did. And now, I don't know how to fix it." "Fix it," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You don't fix things by running away from the truth. You don't fix things by pretending everything's fine, by lying to me and telling me I'm the problem. You don't get to fix this by apologizing." Ryan's face was pale now, the words hitting him harder than I expected. But I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to show him mercy. "No, Ryan," I said, my voice colder now. "You don't get to fix this. Not anymore. The damage has been done, and now, it's time for you to see how it feels." His eyes narrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was cold, calculated, and full of dark satisfaction. "I mean, it's time for you to pay?" I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. Right in front of him, the screen flashed with a series of text messages I had carefully kept hidden from him. Messages I had never let him see. Ryan looked down at the screen, his eyes widening as he read through the texts. The ones where he and Nicole had plotted behind my back, where they had laughed at my expense, where they had made a joke out of my love for him. His hands started to tremble, and he looked up at me, his face pale. "Emma, I didn't know. I never meant for it to go this far." I raised an eyebrow. "But you did. You chose this. You chose her. And now, you're going to have to face the consequences." I leaned in, my voice steady but full of cold resolve. "This isn't just about you anymore, Ryan. This is about showing everyone what you and Nicole really are. And I'm going to make sure they all see it." Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, paralyzed by the truth that was staring him in the face. "You think you're getting away with it," I said, standing up, my heart pounding with satisfaction. "But you're wrong. This isn't over." As I walked toward the door, I paused and turned to look back at him. He was still sitting there, staring at the screen, completely in shock. "Get ready, Ryan," I said, my voice low and deadly. "The world's about to find out who you really are." Just as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Nicole. "Are you really going to do this? Emma, are you really going to destroy everything?" I froze, staring at the screen. Was this a threat? Was she begging for mercy? But before I could respond, the next message came through. "You'll regret this." My heart skipped a beat. What was she planning? I sat in my car, staring at the screen of my phone. Nicole's message was still there, taunting me, waiting for me to acknowledge it. "You'll regret this." I didn't even know how to respond. Was she trying to intimidate me? Was this a warning, or was she simply scared that I was finally going to take control, that I was going to expose everything she had done? But I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I wasn't afraid of any of them. It had all come to this moment. Every betrayal, every lie, every manipulation. It was time for them to face the consequences. But I had to be careful. The final piece of my plan had to be executed just right. I couldn't afford to slip up. I couldn't afford to show them weakness. Not anymore. I hit reply and typed my response. Maybe I will regret it, but at least I'll be able to look myself in the mirror again. I hit send. The message felt like a weight had been lifted. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't pretending that I could just move on and let them off the hook. This was my life, and I had spent far too long letting them control the narrative. The phone buzzed again, and I hesitated. Another message from Nicole. Don't think you'll win this. Emma, the truth will come out, and when it does, you'll be the one everyone turns on. My heart skipped a beat. The truth. What truth? I couldn't help but feel a flicker of unease. But then I reminded myself I had the truth. The truth I had carefully built. Step by step, evidence by evidence. There was no way they could spin this. I sat back in my seat and exhaled slowly. My fingers trembled as I gripped the wheel. There was still so much to do. I needed to take the next step, exposing their lies. Their betrayal, it had to be done in front of everyone. This wasn't just about me. This was about making them see the damage they'd caused. The confrontation. I had arranged the meeting. Ryan, Nicole, and my parents, everyone in one room, and I had my final ace up my sleeve, the evidence. Texts, photos, conversations, everything. I walked into my parents' house that evening, my heart pounding. The place was quiet, the usual sounds of family life absent. It felt empty. I paused for a second in the foyer, taking a deep breath. This was it. When I walked into the living room, my family was already sitting there. Ryan and Nicole looked like they hadn't a care in the world. They were sitting close together, glancing at each other with quiet, nervous smiles. But that all changed when I walked in. Their smiles faltered, their eyes widened, and the tension in the air was palpable. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. The weight of the moment spoke for itself. Emma. My father's voice broke the silence. He looked at me, his expression cautious. What's going on? Why did you want us all here? I couldn't keep the coldness from creeping into my voice. You'll see. I placed my phone on the table between us. I had already pulled up the messages, the evidence. I had everything. Ryan, I began, my voice steady. Nicole, I said, turning to face my sister. You both think you can just get away with this, don't you? You think you can play me, deceive me, and I'll just sit quietly and pretend it didn't happen. Well, it's not happening anymore. Nicole's face paled, and she opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't, not now. I pulled the phone toward me and scrolled through the messages, making sure they saw everything. There were the texts, where Nicole had talked about how easy it was to manipulate me, how she could make me believe whatever she wanted. And there were the messages from Ryan, where he'd admitted to everything, how he wasn't sorry, how he never loved me the way I had loved him. You're pathetic, I said, looking at them both of you. Nicole's eyes flashed with anger. You don't understand. Emma, this is fate. Ryan and I were meant to be together. We didn't ask for any of this. Fate, I echoed, laughing bitterly. You call this fate? This is manipulation. This is selfishness. You destroyed my life. Nicole, and you, Ryan, you let her tear us apart for nothing. Ryan opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. Don't even try to apologize. Don't act like you're sorry. You made your choice, and now you're going to live with it. I turned to my parents, who were sitting there, shocked into silence. My mother's face was red, her eyes wide, while my father just stared at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. This is your fault too, I said, my voice shaking now. You both stood by and watched. You watched them lie to me, deceive me, and yet, all you cared about was keeping up appearances. You chose Nicole and Ryan over me, over your own daughter. You failed me. My father looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He couldn't, because everything I said was true. I had never felt more liberated in my life. The weight that had been crushing my chest for weeks now felt lighter, and the anger I had been holding inside was finally being released. But just as I was about to walk out of the room, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Nicole. "You'll regret this. Emma, the truth is not what you think it is." A chill ran down my spine. What did she mean? What truth? What was she planning now? I felt my stomach drop as I stared at the message. What had she done? What was she hiding before I could respond? The doorbell rang. My heart stopped. Who else could it be? I opened the door, and there, standing on the other side, was someone I never expected to see, someone who would change everything. It was Paul, my brother-in-law, Nicole's husband. And in his hand, he was holding something that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. Story 2. I'm Rebecca Mitchell, 32 years old. And if you think your family is perfect, think again. You may think your parents love you. You might think your siblings have your back. But let me tell you, it's a lie. Everything I believed in my family was built on lies. And the truth, it almost destroyed me. It's been 10 years since I walked out that door, but the story doesn't end there. It only gets worse. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who should love you the most, you're not alone. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Because you're about to hear a story of revenge that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and justice. Rebecca sitting at her desk, the dim light from the window catching her profile. She looks at a manila folder in her hands. Everyone thinks they know who they are, what their family is. But trust me, the truth is always buried beneath the surface. I've lived that truth. She takes a deep breath, staring at the folder with a mix of dread and determination. Her fingers tremble slightly as she holds it, like it's the weight of her past, ready to break free. The camera lingers on her face for a moment, before pulling back to reveal the stack of files on her desk, files that look like they're straight from a law office. But Rebecca's not just any lawyer. She's a woman on a mission, a woman who's fought too long to keep quiet. I could have been anyone. I could have stayed quiet, played the part of the good daughter, the perfect sister. But what's the point? No one listens to the girl who isn't good enough. No one listens to the daughter who doesn't fit the mold. Rebecca stands in front of her family's house, looking like she's holding something heavy inside her chest. The house. It's the kind of place you see in magazine spreads, perfect, glossy, and immaculate. But in her eyes, it's a prison. She shakes her head as the camera pans back to the family gathered for Amanda's wedding. The scene is straight out of a fairy tale. Her sister, Amanda, glowing in a stunning gown, laughing in the arms of their father. James Mitchell, the whole family there, smiling, oblivious to the storm Rebecca is about to unleash. Perfect. They think I'm perfect. They always thought Amanda was perfect, Rebecca says, her voice dripping with bitter irony. But what happens when perfect falls apart? What happens when the lies finally catch up to you? Rebecca's hands tighten around the manila folder again, and she straightens in her chair, staring directly at the camera. The next words are almost like a confession, raw and unfiltered. I've been silent for too long, but I'm done. Done hiding. Done playing nice. She stands up and walks toward the window, the cool light of the evening sky casting shadows on her face. She looks out, as if searching for something, maybe a sense of peace she's never found. Her father, James Mitchell, stands at the front of the room, raising his glass to Amanda. His voice, smooth and authoritative, rings out through the elegant ballroom. To my daughter, Amanda, the one who has always been there, always loyal, and always perfect. Rebecca's jaw clenches. She can't help but remember the way her father always praised Amanda, his golden child, while Rebecca, the rebellious one, was left in the shadows. Rebecca had always tried to win her father's approval. She tried so hard to be perfect for him. But it was never enough. It never mattered. She could see the way his eyes sparkled when he looked at Amanda, the way he smiled, proud of her. And she was just there, an afterthought. I thought I was helping. I thought I was doing everything right. But everything was a lie. My father was never who he said he was. And my mother, she knew. She always knew. But she didn't care. I was just the girl who wasn't good enough. Flashback to her discovery, Rebecca, 14 years old, standing at the door of her father's office. She overhears him talking to someone on the phone. His voice is different, soft, seductive. He's not talking to her mother. No, he's talking to someone else, a woman. She presses her ear against the door, hearing her father confess things she never thought she'd hear. We can't keep doing this. But I need you. Jessica, you know I can't stop. Rebecca's heart races as she steps back, her face pale. It's the first time she's ever seen her father, her hero, so broken. But it's also the first time she truly sees him for who he is. James Mitchell cut to a scene of him finding Rebecca, overhearing, "You don't tell anyone about this. Rebecca, do you understand me?" He slaps her hard across the face, his eyes cold and unforgiving. "Rebecca, I never told anyone, not because I couldn't, but because I knew no one would believe me." Rebecca sighs, shaking her head as she sits back down. The manila folder open in front of her. Inside, it's filled with everything she's gathered: photos, documents, proof of the life her father led behind closed doors. And now, she's ready to expose it all. So here I am, standing in front of everything I once loved, a family built on lies. But it's time to end this. It's time to show the world who my father really is. The camera pulls back slowly, as Rebecca's voice cuts through the silence, chillingly calm. But that's just the beginning. What happens next? Let's just say, I'm not the only one hiding secrets. The screen fades to black, and the words "to be continued" flash across the screen, leaving the audience in suspense, craving what happens next. I had always believed my family was perfect. Our house in Fairfield, Connecticut, was the kind you'd see in glossy magazines. A 6-bedroom colonial with a heated pool, tennis court, and perfectly manicured lawns. To the outside world, we were the Mitchells, a family to envy, a family to admire, the kind of family you imagined when you thought of success and perfection. But as I got older, I learned the truth. The truth. It was uglier than any of us could have ever imagined. I used to be just like Amanda, my younger sister, always the golden child. She had everything going for her. Beautiful, smart, effortlessly charming, and, above all, our father's favorite. He adored her. She was his perfect little angel, his loyal daughter who could do no wrong. Everyone else saw that, too. I thought that if I just played my part, if I kept quiet and followed the rules, I'd finally get the approval I so desperately craved. But the more I tried to be the perfect daughter, the more I realized something wasn't right. Something wasn't real. It was a Saturday evening in the fall, the kind of crisp, cool evening where everything felt just a little too perfect. The smell of fresh-cut grass wafted through the open windows of our grand living room, where my family sat together, as always, in front of the fireplace. Dad, relaxed and poised, held court as he always did, basking in the admiration of his perfect family. My mother, Elizabeth, sat across from him, her blonde hair perfectly styled, a glass of wine in hand as she laughed at one of his jokes. And Amanda, she sat beside Dad, beaming, always smiling, always perfect. As usual. I was the quiet one. I sat off to the side, reading a book, pretending to be okay. But deep down, I was just waiting for the acknowledgement that never came. That perfect, glowing praise that Amanda got so easily. "Dad, you're always so impressive," Amanda said, her voice smooth and affectionate, as she placed a hand on his arm. "I can only hope to follow in your footsteps." And I just sat there, watching. It was during moments like these that I started to notice the cracks in the perfect facade, the smallest details that didn't sit right, the whispers that echoed through the house at night. When everyone else was asleep, my father's late-night phone calls, always muffled, always accompanied by that low, secretive tone. But it wasn't until I turned 14 that everything fell apart. I was just trying to find my way, to carve out some sense of belonging. I didn't expect to find what I found. I stood in the hallway, outside Dad's office door. My father, always the proud, successful heart surgeon, had just come home late again from the hospital. His footsteps were heavy in the hallway, a sign that he was tired. But when he answered his phone, something changed. The tone in his voice dropped. It wasn't the voice he used with me or Mom. It was different, lighter, almost affectionate. And as I pressed my ear to the door, I could hear the words that would change everything. "I can't do this anymore, Jessica, but I need you. You know I'll always need you." The name stuck in my mind. Jessica. I'd never heard that name before, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when he said, "We can't keep doing this, but I need you. You know how much I care for you." I froze. I didn't know what to do. I should have walked away. I should have kept pretending everything was fine. But I didn't. I heard his footsteps approach the door, and before I could move, I saw his face, his cold, unforgiving gaze. Rebecca's voice cracks slightly as she stares at the manila folder, holding back tears. I never told anyone about that night. I never told Mom. I never told Amanda. I couldn't. And why? Because no one would believe me. Because no one would believe the man they all admired was a liar. She leans back in her chair and sighs, the weight of the folder heavy in her hands. The air around her feels thicker now, as though it's closing in on her. She thinks of her family's reputation, their spotless image, everything they stood for. Everything built on lies. The perfect dinner at the country club, the fine wine, the elaborate setup, everything in its place. I didn't want this, but it was expected of me. I was supposed to be grateful, to stand there and accept the attention. But all I could think of was Dad, the way his hand lingered just a little too long on the back of Jessica, the event coordinator. And then I saw them, caught in his office, kissing. Something in me snapped. I couldn't let this go on, not anymore. Back at the dinner, I stood up, shaking but determined. Everyone was laughing, drinking, chatting. The room was full of their praise for Dad, for Amanda, for everything our family had accomplished. But I couldn't just sit there anymore. I grabbed a spoon, clinked my glass, and raised it high. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to celebrate my 18th birthday. But I'd like to propose a toast to my father, James Mitchell, to the man who's worked so hard for this family, for his reputation, and for his ongoing affair with Jessica, our lovely event coordinator." The room went silent. My father's face went from shock to fury in seconds. Amanda looked like she'd seen a ghost. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. At home. It wasn't just my father who erupted. It was my mother, too. I thought she'd defend me. She didn't. She stayed silent. She always stayed silent. "Rebecca, how could you?" Amanda whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You've ruined everything." And that's when I realized I was alone, completely alone, in a house full of people. Rebecca's face hardens as she recalls the scene. Her fists tighten around the folder as she gets up, pacing across the room. That night, that was the end. It wasn't just a fight. It was the final act, the final straw. I was no longer part of their world. I was a stranger, a casualty of their perfect fabricated lives. The camera slowly zooms in on Rebecca as she takes a deep breath, her voice low, but full of resolve. I knew what I had to do after that night. I had to get out, but I also had to make them pay for everything they took from me. They were never going to see it coming. She turns toward the door, glancing one last time at the manila folder in her hand. But the real question is, how far would I have to go to expose them for who they really are? The thing about family is, you don't see it coming. You don't realize that everything you thought was solid, the love, the respect, the trust can shatter in an instant. I didn't just lose my family that day. I lost the very foundation of who I was. And for years, I kept wondering, what was it that finally broke me? Was it the moment I discovered my father's betrayal? No, I had my suspicions for a long time, but it was the way they reacted, the way they turned on me, the silence. That was what did it. Flashback to the dinner table. 5 years ago, it's Thanksgiving, the one holiday where, despite everything, we still pretended to be a family. Dad carved the turkey. Mom passed the mashed potatoes. Amanda sat next to him, her flawless smile radiating as always. Me, I sat across from them, watching them play their roles. Everything was perfect. Or so I thought. And then it happened. The conversation. "Rebecca, are you still with that guy Jason, right?" My mother's voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. I could feel the judgment, the contempt beneath her question. "I don't think he's the right fit for you. Honey," she continued, her eyes flicking to Amanda, "you could do so much better." I froze. The knife I was holding clinked loudly against the plate as I set it down. It felt like a moment of complete betrayal. The whole room went silent. Amanda was looking down at her plate, pretending she didn't notice. Dad kept chewing, pretending everything was normal, like he didn't just witness the quiet degradation of his own daughter. I felt the anger welling up in me, choking me. How could she say that? I laughed bitterly, leaning back in my chair. You'd think, after everything, I'd be used to it by now, but no, it still hurts. Now, I know that Thanksgiving was the moment they chose sides. That was when I knew without a shadow of a doubt that Amanda would always be the favored one, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I've spent years trying to let go, trying to move on. But you don't just erase family like that. Not when every holiday, every memory, every gesture is a reminder of what you've lost. And when your family still refuses to acknowledge the truth, well, that's when the anger starts eating you from the inside out. And it only got worse. It wasn't long after Thanksgiving that I found out the real extent of the lies. My father wasn't just a liar. He was a manipulator, a man who destroyed lives without a second thought. I had always seen him as this larger-than-life figure, the man who held our family together, the successful surgeon everyone respected. But when I started digging, I found something worse. I sat there, overwhelmed, staring at the evidence. I was supposed to be researching for a class project, but my mind wouldn't let go of what I'd found. I needed answers, desperately, and I knew that if I went down this path, there would be no turning back. Jessica, payments, offshore accounts, deals for his private practice. My eyes scanned the screen. It was all there, everything I had feared. I found a trail, A paper trail. My father wasn't just hiding an affair. He was running a multi-million-dollar medical scam, using his position as a heart surgeon to exploit vulnerable patients. And the worst part, he wasn't doing it alone. He had help. Rebecca slams the book shut, her heart pounding in her chest. What do I do with this? What happens when the people I love are the ones who are ruining lives? The feeling of betrayal, of anger, of raw disgust, it consumed me. I wanted to scream, to confront them, but I knew I couldn't, not yet. That night, I stayed up late, my mind racing. I had to be careful. If I confronted them too soon, too directly, they would bury me. They would make it all my fault, like they always did. I needed a plan, a good one. I sat in front of my laptop, scrolling through more files. My hands shook as I downloaded the latest evidence. It was like I could feel my father's breath on the back of my neck, the judgment of my mother's icy stare, the way Amanda never seemed to notice. But none of that mattered anymore. I wasn't a little girl anymore. I wasn't going to sit in silence while they destroyed everything I cared about. I had one shot at this, and I wasn't going to waste it. The tension in my body was unbearable as I picked up the phone. I dialed the number for the legal office, my stomach in knots. Rebecca, it's good to hear from you. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, my heart hammering in my chest. I'm ready. Let's bring them down. I felt like a different person as I made the final preparations. The next step was risky, too risky. But that's the thing about revenge, it doesn't care about the consequences. I couldn't let this go, not now. As I walked to the door, the stack of documents in my hand, I felt a wave of fear hit me. What if I failed? What if they turned everything around on me? The door creaked open, and I stepped into the unknown. But then my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a new message. I paused, looking at the text, "We need to talk. Meet me at the office. Now." My heart sank. It was Amanda.
Was this a trap?
I stared at the phone, frozen. A mix of fear and anticipation coursing through my veins. What was she going to say? What did she know? The tension was unbearable as I stood there, staring at my phone. Amanda's message still flashed on the screen. A simple sentence, yet it felt like a ticking time bomb. "We need to talk. Meet me at the office. Now." It's funny, isn't it, how quickly everything can change? One moment, I'm ready to tear down everything I've ever known about my family. The next, I'm second-guessing every choice I've made. What if I'm wrong? What if Amanda's just trying to stop me? I took a deep breath and locked my phone. I could feel the weight of the decision on my shoulders. There was no turning back now. I had to face her, no matter what it take. It didn't matter if I was scared. What mattered was making them pay. Flashback to Rebecca pacing in her small apartment. Months earlier, I remember the first night I started planning this. It felt like everything was falling into place, but it also felt like I was losing myself in the process. The idea of exposing my father's crimes was one thing, but facing my family, especially Amanda, that was another. It started simple, I told myself. I'll gather the evidence. I'll make sure it's undeniable. But as the months went on, I realized I wasn't just after justice. No, I was after something much deeper: revenge. I had my father's secret files, his financial records, and enough evidence to bury him. But the hard part, that was coming. The twist. The moment I had to decide how far I was willing to go to tear apart everything they built. Present day. Outside the office, I stood at the front of a glass and steel building, my heart pounding in my chest. The cold wind from the city streets nipped at my skin, but I hardly felt it. My entire body was a bundle of nerves, ready to unravel. This is it. The office. It was the one place that held everything. The place where the truth, the lies, and the answers I'd been searching for would finally collide. And there, standing at the door, was Amanda. She was pacing outside the office, her figure sharp against the city skyline behind her. I could feel her eyes on me before she even said anything. Her gaze was cold, distant. The smile she wore was tight, forced. She was trying to control the situation, trying to make me believe she was still the perfect sister. But I saw through it. "Rebecca." Amanda's voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. She had never been one to show vulnerability. It made me feel stronger, more in control. I took a step toward her, my eyes narrowing. "We need to talk, don't we?" She hesitated, then nodded, as if trying to measure me up, to understand just how far I'd gone. "This isn't you," she said softly, her words almost too quiet to hear. "What are you really trying to do here?" I smiled, but it wasn't a kind one. "You're wrong about me, Amanda. I'm not the person you think I am, and I'm done pretending for you." Her face flickered for just a second. Was that fear in her eyes? But she quickly masked it. Straightening up, flashback to Rebecca in her apartment again. Months earlier, I sat on the floor, papers spread out around me. The realization hit hard. I had the power to destroy their lives with just one phone call. All it would take was one step, one single move to expose everything. I'd been afraid for so long, not just of what they had done to me, but of what would happen when I took action. What if I lost everything in the process? But then it hit me. What would I lose that I hadn't already lost? My family gone, my reputation ruined, my sense of security long gone. All I had left was the truth, and it was the only thing that mattered. Present day. Confrontation in the office. I followed Amanda into the building, the lobby towering over us. The glass walls seemed to stretch on forever, reflecting our every move. We stepped into the elevator, and for a brief moment, it was just the two of us. No one else around, no distractions. "You don't have to do this," Amanda whispered as the elevator doors closed, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. I looked at her, studying her face, the girl who had always been my father's darling, the one who could do no wrong. I had always tried to protect her. I had always taken the fall for her. But now, she was just as guilty. She had been complicit in everything. She knew what our father was doing, and yet she chose to stay silent. "I've spent my whole life protecting you, Amanda," I said, my voice low. "But I'm done. You don't get to play the victim anymore, not after everything you've let happen." We arrived at the office. The building was sleek, modern, full of glass and steel, a symbol of the wealth and success my father had built, a place that held every dirty secret he had ever kept. Amanda stopped in front of the door to his office, her hand hovering over the handle. She glanced at me, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. But she didn't speak. She didn't need to. I already knew. She was scared. I took a step forward, pushing the door open. The room smelled of rich wood and leather. The office was immaculate, the walls lined with shelves of books and degrees, evidence of the life my father had built, a life built on lies. Amanda followed me inside, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. Knowing the truth was just within reach. "Rebecca," she said, her voice more urgent now. "You don't know what you're doing. This will ruin everything." I turned to face her, my expression hard. "It's already ruined." Just as I began to speak, the door slammed open behind us. A man stepped in, someone I hadn't expected to see. My pulse quickened, my body froze. It was my father's lawyer. And in his hand, a thick envelope with the words urgent stamped in bold, red ink. The envelope shook in my hands as I stared at the man who had just entered the room. The lawyer. I hadn't expected him. No. Scratch that, I had prayed he wouldn't show up. But there he was, standing in front of us, his expensive suit making him look even more like the man who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. And that envelope. It wasn't just any envelope. This was the moment everything could go wrong. My heart raced. I could feel the tension in my chest, every muscle wound tight. I tried to calm myself, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The weight of what I was about to do was suffocating. One wrong move, and I could lose everything. Flashback to weeks earlier. The calm before the storm, I remember sitting in my apartment, scrolling through the same documents I'd gone over 100 times. My mind was a whirlpool of anger, pain, and determination. I'm going to take them down. I have to. I can't live with myself if I don't. The truth had been right there, hidden in plain sight. My father's involvement in the medical scam, his secret meetings, his offshore accounts, all of it was within my reach. But the hard part, the real challenge, it was exposing them. My family, my father, my sister, Amanda. I knew I couldn't go to the police yet, not without concrete evidence. They would bury me. I thought, I have to do this myself. Present day, in the office, staring at the lawyer. His eyes were cold, calculating, like he already knew exactly how this was going to play out. He didn't even flinch as he handed me the envelope. He simply held it out, as if he were offering me a gift I had no choice but to accept. "You've been digging around, haven't you?" he said, his voice low but firm. "I thought you'd be smarter than this. Rebecca, you should have stayed out of this." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too focused on the envelope in my hands, the faint rustle of paper, the almost electric feeling that I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. Flashback to the first day, I decided to fight back. It had started small. One late-night conversation with Uncle Joe, my mother's brother, who had always seen through the perfect family facade. He'd warned me for years that my father's success wasn't as legitimate as it seemed. I'd laughed it off back then, chalking it up to his paranoia. But the more I looked into things, the more I saw that Uncle Joe wasn't wrong. "They've been hiding something for years. Rebecca," he'd said, his voice a mix of concern and disbelief. "It's bigger than you think." And that was the moment it clicked. That was when I knew the truth wasn't just about betrayal. It was about exposing a lie that had cost so many people their lives. Present day, in the office with the lawyer. The lawyer's cold eyes stared at me, as if daring me to make a move. "What's in the envelope?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt foreign coming from my lips. I wasn't sure I was ready for what I might find inside. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile you give someone right before you deliver a blow that'll leave them breathless. "You'll see." He stepped back, watching me carefully, "but I'm warning you. Rebecca, you don't know what you're messing with." I could feel the weight of his words like an anchor in my gut. What if I don't care? I thought. What if I'm already in too deep to turn back now? I opened the envelope slowly, every movement deliberate. The papers inside were cold, sharp against my fingers. The first sheet was a transcript, something that looked like a conversation between my father and someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. "You've got the money, right? Transfer it now. The deal goes through today. Or we walk." The name on the bottom of the page caught my eye. Jessica. My father had been dealing with her for years, Jessica. The same woman I'd overheard him talking to on the phone that night when everything changed. The truth hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just my father. It was Amanda, my mother. They were all in on it. Flashback to Rebecca standing on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at the city lights that night, after finding the evidence. I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. I couldn't be the quiet daughter anymore, the one who stayed hidden in the shadows, pretending everything was fine. They had built this empire on lies, and I was going to tear it down. But I also knew I couldn't do this alone. I need help. I muttered to myself. I can't do this without someone watching my back. That's when I thought of Uncle Joe, the one person who had always known the truth, who had always seen through the perfection my family worked so hard to maintain. If anyone would help me, it would be him. Present day, in the office, with Amanda. Amanda stood beside me, her arms folded, her eyes flicking nervously between me and the lawyer. She wasn't sure what to make of this yet, but I could see it in her eyes. The fear, the guilt. "You really thought you could do this, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "You think exposing him will make everything better? You think you'll get your justice?" I looked at her, feeling a strange mix of pity and anger. She didn't get it. She had never gotten it. She had always been too wrapped up in the world my father had created. The world where everything was about appearances, about status, about perfection. But I wasn't playing by those rules anymore. Twist. The lawyer's revelation. Just as I was about to respond, the lawyer stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with something far darker than I expected. "You're not in control here, Rebecca," he said, a smug smile spreading across his face. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. Do you really think your father didn't see this coming?" My heart stopped. "What?" He chuckled softly, as if reading my thoughts. "This isn't the first time someone's tried to take him down. You know, and it won't be the last." The door slammed open behind us, and we turned to see another figure standing in the doorway, a man I didn't expect to see. It was Uncle Joe, and in his hand, another envelope. But this time, it wasn't just any envelope. It was a sealed letter, with my name on it. The envelope in Uncle Joe's hand felt like the heaviest thing I'd ever seen. The room was suffocating. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at it, my name, written in bold letters across the front. I had no idea what was inside, but I could feel the weight of everything hanging in the balance. "Uncle Joe, what's this?" My voice trembled, despite my best efforts to sound steady. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just handed it to me. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse spike. I took the envelope slowly, feeling the cold edge of the paper against my fingertips. The air seemed to thicken around me as I tore it open. Unfolding the letter inside, it was a single sheet of paper, nothing fancy. But what was written on it? That's what I feared. The words on the page seemed to blur together as I read. "Rebecca, you don't know everything. I need you to trust me. There's more you need to see. It's not just your father. It's the entire system. This goes deeper than you think." I froze. I stared at the letter, unable to comprehend what it meant. "What do you mean? What's deeper than my father?" I thought, my stomach sinking. Flashback to the family's dinner, months ago. It was an ordinary evening at first, just another family dinner where nothing ever seemed out of place. But there was always that underlying tension. I'd started to notice the little things. The way my father would receive strange phone calls late at night. The way Amanda would leave the room when certain topics came up. The way my mother would brush off questions with a quick smile, but her eyes would dart around like she was hiding something. And then, I saw it the moment when everything clicked. I had been walking through the hallway when I overheard my father speaking to someone in his study. It was late, but the voice on the other end wasn't a colleague. It wasn't a patient. It was Jessica, the same woman I'd found out about years ago. the woman my father had been seeing behind my mother's back. Only this time, the conversation wasn't about love. No, this time it was about business. The money's in place. I'll transfer it once the deal is finalized. Your family won't know a thing. They'll think it's all legitimate. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. What deal? What money? I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, listening in horror as my father sealed his own fate. The truth was worse than I could have imagined. Back to the present. The weight of the letter in my hands felt like an anchor, and my breath quickened. What had Uncle Joe meant? Before I could say anything, the lawyer stepped forward again. He was watching me, his smirk widening as he watched me process the letter. Didn't expect that, did you? He leaned in, his voice low, almost taunting. You think you've uncovered the truth, that you're some hero in this story. You're just a pawn in something much bigger. Your father, your whole family, they've been playing a game far longer than you've been alive. I could feel my body heat up with anger. How dare he? How dare he stand there and act like he had the power to control everything? Amanda stood by the wall, her face pale. She hadn't spoken much, but I could see the unease in her eyes. She was just as terrified as I was, maybe more. The guilt was eating at her. Though she didn't show it, she was trying so hard to maintain her perfect facade. But it was crumbling, piece by piece. This isn't what I wanted. Rebecca. Amanda finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted any of this to happen. I didn't know about the money. Or the deals. I didn't know. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe her. But the other part of me, the part that had suffered for years, felt betrayed beyond words. You knew. Amanda, I said, my voice low, the anger bubbling up again. You always knew. You were just too scared to say anything. You were too scared to stand up for the truth. So don't come at me now like you're innocent. Amanda's eyes welled with tears. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when everything I'd ever believed in was collapsing around me. Flashback to Rebecca and Uncle Joe. Weeks earlier. You have to trust me, Rebecca. Uncle Joe had told me when I finally went to him for answers. Your father's not the man you think he is. But this isn't just about him. This is about your whole family. And you have to make a choice. If you want to expose them, you have to do it carefully. One wrong move, and it's all over. I had listened to him. I had spent hours poring over documents, trying to understand the full extent of the scam. But Uncle Joe was right. This wasn't just about my father. This was about a network, a system that had been operating for years. And if I exposed it, I wasn't just taking down my father. I was exposing everything my family had worked so hard to build. If you're going to burn it all down, Rebecca, Uncle Joe had warned, you'd better be ready for the fallout. You'll lose more than just your family. You'll lose everything. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but there was no going back now. Present day, the confrontation in the office. I looked at the lawyer, then at Amanda, then back at the envelope in my hands. The pressure was mounting, and I could feel the weight of my decision crushing me. You're playing a dangerous game, the lawyer said, his voice smooth, but with an underlying threat. You think you can take down a system that's been in place for decades? Think again. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. I'm not afraid anymore, I said, my voice steady. Despite the chaos inside me, you all wanted to play this game? Well, now it's my turn. And this time, I'm not losing. I walked toward the door, clutching the envelope tightly in my hand. The truth was close now. It was within my reach. But as I stepped out of the office, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I paused. My heart raced. What now? The message read, "You're about to get everything you wanted, but be careful what you wish for. The truth comes at a price." I looked up from the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice on the other end of the line was familiar. It was the voice of someone I hadn't heard from in years. "Rebecca," the voice said, "it's time." And in that moment, I knew. I was in deeper than I thought. The phone call that changed everything ended just as quickly as it had started. Rebecca, that voice. The voice I hadn't heard in years. "It's time." I stood frozen, staring at the phone screen, my pulse racing, the weight of his words settling deep in my chest. Who was this? What did he mean by time? And why now? Everything had led to this. Every choice, every moment, every piece of evidence I had so carefully collected. The walls of my carefully constructed revenge plan were closing in, and I couldn't stop the flood of fear and adrenaline that coursed through me. What now? Flashback to the past Rebecca's childhood. The first hint of betrayal I remember when I was younger. I used to look at my family and think they had everything figured out. My father, so confident and successful. My mother, always poised, always perfect. And then there was Amanda, my perfect sister, the one who seemed to glide through life without a care. I wanted to be like her. I wanted to fit in. But as I got older, the cracks started to show. I saw the whispers behind closed doors. I noticed the tension between my parents, the way my mother would shut down when I asked about certain things. But I kept pushing those thoughts away. This is my family, I told myself. They wouldn't betray me. But they did. And it started with my father. His secrets, his lies, his choices that led to the destruction of everything we had. Back to the present. Rebecca standing alone in her apartment, staring out at the city lights I had spent years building up to this moment, planning every step, gathering the pieces of the puzzle that would finally expose the truth. But now that I had it all, I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. Could I go through with it? Could I expose everything I had learned, knowing it would tear apart my family? Could I destroy everything just to get even? I leaned against the window, my breath fogging up the glass as I thought about everything I had lost, the family I thought I could trust, the people I had spent years trying to please. The idea of a perfect life, shattered. Was it worth it? Scene transition. Uncle Joe's warning. I remembered what Uncle Joe had told me the night I first reached out for help. His words had haunted me for weeks. You need to be ready for the fallout. Rebecca, if you go down this road, you won't just lose your father. You'll lose everything. I never wanted to believe him. But now, standing here, looking at everything I'd uncovered, I understood. Uncle Joe wasn't wrong. The stakes had always been higher than I had imagined. It wasn't just about exposing my father's crimes. It was about uncovering a network that had been running in the shadows for years, quietly ruining lives in its wake. And now that network was coming after me. Back to the office, the final confrontation with Amanda. I hadn't expected Amanda to be there when I walked into the office. I thought I'd be alone, confronting my father's lawyer and finalizing everything. But Amanda was there, standing by the door, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "Rebecca, I don't know what you're doing, but this isn't you," she said, her voice cracking. I didn't know whether to feel pity or anger. "I'm doing what I should have done years ago," I replied, my voice colder than I intended. "I'm finally standing up for myself. I'm done being the scapegoat. Amanda, I'm done hiding in the shadows while everyone else gets away with murder." She stepped closer, her eyes filled with tears. "You're wrong. You don't know what you're really dealing with. This is bigger than us. This is bigger than you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent so long believing that I was in control, that I had the upper hand. But what if she was right? What if I had only scratched the surface of a much larger conspiracy? I couldn't afford to doubt myself now. I had already gone too far. It doesn't matter anymore, I said, my voice steady. The truth is coming out, whether you like it or not. Twist. The unexpected arrival of someone else, just as Amanda tried to speak again. The door to the office opened behind us. A shadow fell across the room, and my heart dropped.
It was my father.
Not in person, but his presence was unmistakable. The man I had spent my whole life trying to please, the man who had broken my heart, was now the one who had orchestrated everything. And there he was, his lawyer stepping forward with a folder, his face unreadable. I think it's time we end this little game. Rebecca, the lawyer said, a smug smile on his face. I felt a surge of anger. A fire I hadn't known was still burning inside me. Game. You think this is just a game. You think you can get away with what you've done. He raised an eyebrow. I don't think you understand. Rebecca, you're in way over your head. But don't worry. We'll be taking care of this, one way or another. I felt the ground beneath me shift. The stakes had just gotten higher. I wasn't just fighting my family anymore. I was up against an entire system, one that had been in place for years, my father's empire. And now that I was in the thick of it, I had no idea how to get out. What are you going to do now? Rebecca, the lawyer, asked, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, the words were clear. You're not the only one with secrets. Be careful who you trust. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Who was it? Who else was out there, watching me? And as I looked up at the lawyer's cold smile, I realized the game wasn't over yet.